Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Raya and Mordechai, and welcome everybody to the to this special edition of Kabbalah Café, Erev Shabbat Kodesh, as we are about to read Parshat Mishpatim this Shabbat. Last week we discussed in the Torah. We talked about the giving of the Luchot HaBrit, Aseret HaDebrot, 10 Commandments. And this week we dive right into many laws which deal with basic laws as far as Bein Adam L'Chavero, between man and their friend, and very monetary laws, and so on and so forth. One of the interesting laws that we discuss is the law of guarding. If you give someone an object to guard for you, to watch for you, there are several laws which apply to that. It depends if you gave the person something, that person's watching for you for free, or you're hiring a person to watch something for you, or you're lending it. It's also a type of your object. You're giving it to someone else. So it all depends on many scenarios. One of the points that the Torah tells us regarding shomrim, someone that guards something for you, or in other scenarios as well, is an interesting concept of a shavua. Shavua is a vow. So in certain cases, we're not sure exactly if the person that's responsible enough that he has to pay if something is missing or something is ruined when the owner comes back to claim their object. So because we don't know, in certain scenarios, the Torah tells us, Shavuat Hashem tihiyeh bein shneim. The vow, the swearing in the name of Hashem should be between both of them. For example, one of the several examples of where Beit Din makes a person vow is if a person said, let's say someone says, I gave you $100 to watch for me, and the person says, you only gave me 50, and here's the 50. And so it's called he agrees with a portion. He's not denying the whole relationship. He agrees partially. And so therefore, because he is acknowledging that there was this communication and some kind of one person A giving something to person B, so B acknowledges that A did give him something. There's just a disagreement on the amount. So we make Mr. B make a vow, and he says, I only got 50, and here's the 50. So then we tell the other guy, he made a vow. Now, this whole idea of making a vow is very interesting, and we're going to get back to this in a few minutes. But before we get back to the subject of a vow and how we can take it into our personal lives, so I'd like to share with you a very fundamental concept in the Tanya. We touched upon this yesterday in our class online. You can see it on our YouTube channel. That was chapter 25. But that chapter 25 is sort of zooming in on the answers to the questions that were asked in chapter 1. So in chapter 1, the Alter Rebbe lays down the foundations of the Tanya. And the Tanya is the fundamental sefer book of the entire Chassidut. It is based on a very deep discussion on the issues and problems that a person can face as far as their soul is concerned, deep down. In order to explain that, the Alter Rebbe needs to clarify the whole subject of good and evil and how this translates into a person's soul. Now, in the Tanya, the Alter Rebbe directs a person to see all the many issues that they encounter, the different inclinations that a person has deep down within him, to narrow in, to realize that it's really all part of one issue, that there is a struggle between two forces in every soul. So we should realize that it's not just a personal issue, it's an issue that every person encounters, and also in every situation in the world. Very often, we're dealing with a struggle between good and bad. And if we sit down for a second and we think about what the fork of the way is, which intersection are we at? In order to know how to cross it, we have to know where we are. And so the understanding itself that it's not just a personal struggle, but it's a global struggle, sort of makes it easier on the person to be able to deal with it. What does the Alter Rebbe say right at the beginning of chapter 1? He quotes a Braita, which is like a Mishnah in the Talmud, that says that when Hashem sends down the neshama, before the neshama is born, mashbi'im oto tehi tzadik v'al tehi rasha. We make a person vow that they're going to be a tzaddik, a righteous person, and they're not going to be a rasha, they're not going to be an evil person. It sounds funny. How could you make a person vow even before he came down? There's no idea what he's going to encounter. Like the joke that's told when the neshama is coming down, he meets another neshama going up after 120, 180, and he says, "Nu, what's it like down there?" He wants to get into it. And so he says, "Well, it's wonderful. You could do all these mitzvahs, and it's an amazing, and you can accomplish so much." He goes, "Oh, wow, that sounds great." So the guy going up says, wait. It's not so simple. If you want to acquire a beautiful etrog or a beautiful pair of tefillin or a beautiful Shabbat candlesticks, boy, do you have to work hard. Boy, are there tests and trials and tribulations until you get there. So you have to work very hard in order to achieve these wonderful, great opportunity mitzvahs. And so how can you make a person vow, a neshama, even before he came down, he doesn't know what it's all about? How can mashbi'in oto tehi tzadik v'al tehi rasha? We make him vow, you're going to be a tzaddik. So what we're going to learn is, and this is the point, this is the thread through this special Dvar Torah that we're learning today, is that we're not teasing a person. We're not telling them, you know what, make a vow, and then we're throwing you to the world, succeed on your own. You don't need to have any support. Rather, when Hashem makes the neshama make a vow, mashbi'in oto, what are we really doing? We're empowering the neshama to be able to survive the trials and tribulations, not only to survive, but to thrive. This is also alluded to in the word mashbi'in. Mashbi'in means we make them vow, we make the neshama vow. If you take the shin and for a moment make it a sin, letter sin, they're both the same letters. From one, instead of a shin, it becomes a sin. Masbi'in oto. It becomes a different word. And now you'll see the connection. The other word is masbi'in, milashon sova. Sova means to be satiated, to be full, to be all full after you've eaten. So it's not only by food. Anytime you give someone, you empower someone with a koach, with a certain energy, you're making them satiated. Now I feel like I'm ready for the challenge. Or if a person's, just like when a person's hungry and then they eat and they feel, oh, now they feel good. They're not like looking for food and they're not, rather they feel satiated. So too, Hashem tells the neshama, I am empowering you. I'm giving you the ability to be able to stand up to the many challenges that you may encounter when you're down there in the world. Now, it's very important to point out here one point, which we'll get back to soon. But this point is that when Hashem empowers the neshama, what's he doing? He's giving the neshama Hashem's own powers, not just human powers. Rather, Hashem is giving a person godly powers. What I just said now is a very important point. This is the essence of the Tanya. This is the essence of the shir that we're giving today. It's an amazing point. One can think, oh, I have powers, I have energy, but it's the energy that I, as a human being, can achieve. That Hashem gives us is godly. And this is alluded to in the verse. The Alter Rebbe explains later on in chapter 1, in the verse that states, Uneshamot ani asiti. I have made neshamot. The simple meaning is, Hashem made many neshamot, many people all around. But the deeper meaning is, Uneshamot ani asiti. Within every person, we have two types of neshamot. Or it's better yet interpreted as being a nefesh, as the Arizal says. Nefesh, nefesh also means a soul. Neshama is also a soul, but a neshama is a much deeper soul. Usually neshama is referred to as the godly soul from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so what are these two souls that we're talking about within the individual? One is a godly soul, as we said earlier. That's easier to connect it to the idea of a soul. But then you have another type of soul, and that's called the animalistic soul. And this animalistic soul is like an animal. In Hebrew, we say kishmo kenhu. It is just like its name. It's called an animalistic soul, and it schleps along. It's all into its materialism, and it's not. There's no life there. There's no excitement in spirituality. It's just totally into the physical world and the materialism of the world. The classic example is when Rivka, who was Yitzchak's wife, finally became pregnant. And when she would go in the street, when she walked by a shul, the child jumped. And when she went by a church, the child jumped. So she was all confused. And she went to the Shem, who was the Rebbe, the leader of the generation, and he told her, don't worry, you don't have a bipolar child. You have two children. One is a tzaddik, and he gets excited when you walk by a shul. And the other one, Esav, the first one was Yaakov. The second one is Esav, which unfortunately gets excited when you walk by the other place. But these two babies, twins, but moreover, two children represent two types of forces within every single person. We have the godly soul and we have the animal soul, who is interested, not only interested, but pushing us encouraging us, uplifting us, empowering us. Come on, you could do it. Go do another mitzvah. Go do another Torah class. Help another person. Give more tzedakah. Bring food for Shabbos. Bring over guests. Do more mitzvahs. Keeps pushing us. And then we have another voice that's inside of us, which is, unfortunately, telling, what do you need it for? You don't need it. You're too busy. You know, you can write a whole volume of excuses of why not to do each mitzvah. Pulling you down like an animal. Just uninterested, cooling you off from doing the mitzvahs. And this can be on a daily level, it can be on an hourly level, even on every minute. Whatever you do, you can encounter, do I do good or do I do not good? So this struggle is a struggle which is a real thing. And the Alter Rebbe discusses in the Tanya how to deal with the struggle, how to overcome this struggle. And that's why so many people across the Jewish spectrum appreciate the Tanya and learn the Tanya. And you can learn the Tanya 1 year. And then the next year you learn it again and again and again. Because every time you learn it, it talks to you. It talks to we always have new challenges. We always have new issues to deal with. And Bezrat Hashem, through learning the Tanya, we're able to overcome. It keeps us focused on how to make the right decisions in every crossroad that we encounter. So we said in the beginning that Hashem says, you got to make a vow. Tihi tzaddik. You should be a tzaddik, v'al tihi rasha, and do not be an evil person. So it seems like you have two choices. Either be a tzaddik or a rasha. Righteous or evil. And that's really, in a sense, what we just said. Be like Yaakov or like Esau. But the truth is, there's a middle path. And it's not just another path. The Tanya is called Sefer Shel Beinonim, a book of the intermediates. This is the main point of the Tanya. How to be a Beinoni. How to be a middle path. Now, we're not talking about the halachic terminologies of a tzaddik, rasha, and Beinoni, righteous, evil, and intermediate. The halachic terminology is the mitzvahs. If you're majority, you do majority mitzvahs, you're called a tzaddik. If you do majority of sins, God forbid, you're called a rasha, an evil person. A Beinoni is half and half. Half meritorious mitzvahs and half sins, averos. So the Alter Rebbe is teaching us how, on a different level of tzaddik. We're talking over here about a soulful level, and then as far as the Hashama is concerned. In other words, according to the Tanya, a Beinoni is perfect, doesn't do any sins, almost like the tzaddik of the halachic terminology. But the Beinoni still has a great desire and craving to do sin. Evil is live and kicking within his soul. Nevertheless, he succeeds to overcome his challenges and his issues every single time. So on one hand, the mitzvah does perfect, doesn't do any sins. He does only mitzvahs. But at the same time, he has this struggle. So it's almost as if the Beinoni is pretty much the vast majority of people. Beinoni is a person who has struggles, but hopefully overcomes them. But then there's a phrase from one of the great Hasidim of the Tzemach Tzedek. His name was Rabbi Hillel of Parach. He was such a great Chassid. First of all, he was the rabbi of Parach for 80 years. From the age of 25, you do the math, until 105. He was a great Chassid. And the Tzemach Tzedek even said about him, he said, I have 2.5 Chasidim. So they said, who is the half Chassid? It's almost How could you be either you're a chassid or you're not a chassid? She said, it's Rabbi Hillel of Parach. Why is he only a half a chassid and not a complete chassid? So the Tzemach Tzedek responded, because he's a half a Rebbe. That's how great he was. So Rabbi Hillel, there's a famous quote from Rabbi Hillel, which states, Halavai Beinani. You might have heard the expression, Halavai, I wish. And when he learned the Tanya, he said to himself, Halavai Beinani, I wish I was a Beinani, this intermediate path. Now this is Rabbi Hillel of Parach that lived 150 years ago. What are we going to say about ourselves? We're much lower than Rabbi Hillel of Parach. So on one hand, the Alter Rebbe is telling us, be a Beinani. You could do it, be a Beinani, which is really Tihi Tzadik, that Hashem makes us vow in the halachic terminology, that be perfect as much as possible. And on the other hand, you have this phrase which is quoted in Chassidus, even the Rebbe quoted him, Halavai Beinani, I wish I was a Beinani. So is the Beinani within reach or not? This is the secret Parsha. When we talk about the Shavua, when we talk about the vow that the Chachamim, our sages, the Beit Din, make Mr. B vow, they make him vow and they say, okay, if you don't want to pay the $100 that Mr. A lent you or entrusted you with, and you claim that you only owe $50, so make a vow. This vow is similar, obviously on a spiritual level, on a metaphoric level. This vow is not only the literal vow that we learn about in Parshat Mishpatim. This vow is related to the vow that Hashem makes every neshama vow on his way down before it's born. Just like we said earlier, that Hashem tells, we should really start from the Beit Din, which will clarify what we said earlier. There's a fascinating thing which it says in the Rambam. It says as follows: when we come to the Beit Din, two people come to the Beit Din, and the Beit Din say, the Jewish court says, you got to make a vow. So he could say, okay, I'll make a vow. But in my own mind, he'll say, I don't really mean it. So we don't want these wise guys to make a vow and it's not really authentic. So the Beit Din, one of the things that they tell the person is something very interesting. Lo al da'atcha anu mashpi'in otcha. We are not making you vow on your own opinion, on your own knowledge, on your own understanding. Ella al da'ateinu, rather on our knowledge. So when Mr. B makes the vow, I only got from you, Mr. A, $50, and here they are. It's on the knowledge of the Beit Din, not the knowledge of the individual. And then he can say, oh, I didn't really mean it, or I just said it, verbal expression, but it was not, I didn't really mean it. But he's making the vow on the knowledge and an understanding of the Beit Din. Oh, that's already serious. And so from here we see that the regular vow, which is done in the Beit Din, is similar to the vow that we talked about earlier when Hashem makes us vow every neshama before he comes down. That it's not just that the neshama says, okay, I'll make the vow, now I'm on my own and I can do whatever in the world I want. Rather, we're making the neshama vow on Hashem's knowledge, so to speak. Hashem is saying, I am making you make a vow on my understanding. So on one hand, one can say, one second. You're making me vow on Hashem's knowledge? How do you ever expect me to stand by this test? How do you expect me to survive in a world full of challenges and issues? Therefore, now we understand, based on what we said in the beginning, that it's not just mashbi'im with a shin, that Hashem makes us vow. Rather, also with a sin, masbi'im. Hashem makes us satiated. Hashem gives us godly powers. Hashem fills us up with the potential to be able to stand by all of the challenges that we may encounter in our lives. So we see a beautiful connection. It's not just Beit Din makes a person make a vow. It could be scary, and actually, if you look at the details and how the vow is made, no, it's uplifting. When a person sees themselves in a certain challenge, in a certain scenario, that means that Hashem knew that this person can stand by the test. And therefore Hashem specifically gave him this test. Because this person has the kochot, has the energy and the ability and the power to be able to stand up to the test and pass it with flying colors. And so therefore, the Alter Rebbe wrote this sefer of Beinanim, which is Midat Kol Adam. This is the midah, this is the action, the attributes of every person. Every person can strive to achieve this great level of becoming a Benoni, an intermediate person, according to the Tanya. So hopefully, as we've learned today, a deeper meaning of this Shavua, of this vow, just like if you've seen the video that I sent out yesterday and today, the short Shabbos video, the pre-Shabbos video, it's about another subject, I think very, very interesting, about 3.5 minutes, about how to learn another law of Mishpatim according to the teachings of Chassidus. And it's beautiful how we see how the entire Torah is one. It's not like we have the revealed Torah, which is Mishnah, Talmud, and then we have on the other of the mystical interpretations of the Torah, the Zohar, the Tanya, and so on. Rather, it's all one Torah. You can learn one portion, one pasuk, one verse or more in Parshat Mishpatim, then learn Chassidus, how this is learned on a much deeper level, perhaps in a Gan Eden or in the heavenly court, how they learn this in addition to the literal meaning, this every pasuk, every word can be learned on a metaphorical level. And it's beautiful to see how this is entirely one complete Torah. Thank you very much for joining us. Mincha Bezrat Hashem right here at Chabad of Rechavia this evening at 10 to 5. And then we look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning for Chassidut for Tehillim. Tehillim at Shabbos Mevarchim, blessing the new month of the first Adar. We're jumping into 60 days of happiness and simcha, 2 months of Adar. So this is a very loaded Shabbos. Just like we said, masbi'im. Hashem gives us the power. So this Shabbos, we also get the power to be able to celebrate and mark these 2 months the way they're supposed to be. Of course, we have a couple of big events coming up in these 2 months. The welcoming of the new Torah and the celebration, also Purim, Azazaza. So we look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow morning, 8:30 for Tehillim. Bezrat Hashem, 9 o'clock Chassidut, and 9:30 davening, followed by a Kiddush and a special guest speaker for the Kiddush tomorrow. All the best. Have a wonderful Shabbos.